Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Ashley Michaud, your coach. It's all happening.
Here we go. Hello and welcome, you beautiful souls. It's Ashley here from Elemental Growth, and I've got another friend I want to introduce you to. This is Jesse Simpson. Amazing guy with a great story. I know he's going to inspire you today to really just start taking action and start pursuing some of these dreams that you've got for yourself. You know, this is a guy that he's been through a lot in his life, and he's still pursuing new dreams, and he's following his path. So without further ado, I'll pass you off to Jesse, and he can let you know a little bit more about who he is and what he's doing.
Well, thank you, Ashley, so much for having me on here. I'm excited, and thanks to all of you who are listening. Well, you set me up right there, so I need to stretch out for this one, I think, because you set me up. People are going to be expecting a lot out of this one.
I'll do one too.
So stretch it out. If you're listening, make sure you stretch it out because it's about to get wild in here. Yeah, so my name is Jesse Simpson. Who am I? Trying to figure that out. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm a former firefighter. I transitioned into coaching, and I'm doing leadership coaching. I help men become pillars of safety and security in their family and community. That's the main focus of my area right now. I'm also working at took a full-time job. So I'm trying to do all these different things, and I'm really ultimately here though to build out this vision that has come to me in the last few months. This has kind of been manifesting over the last few years of this idea of humans in harmony with themselves, each other, and the world around us. And the way that's coming out for me is a holistic wellness and music festival that I've been putting a lot of time and energy to over the last 6 months or so, to bring people together, to show them what it's like when we work together and celebrate our life of a life of freedom and connection, and really start to tackle health, healing, and heart-centered living in a real and authentic way. But that's just a bunch of words, really, since you don't know much about me. So it's kind of cool that you're coming here now, Ashley. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but it was June 26th. So 6 days from now, from this date of this recording, 2018, so before my 4-year anniversary, when I took a one-way flight to Costa Rica with no real plans of ever coming home. And man, I had an absolute adventure of a lifetime. I backpacked all throughout Costa Rica. I sat with ayahuasca for the first time. I backpacked through Peru, hiked the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, met all kinds of incredible people. Spent 2 months in Colombia where my mind was just blown, and just totally my perspective on what reality was shifted there. Backpacked through Europe for a while and got engaged with my now wife in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Just had this total adventure of a lifetime. And it's crazy to think back now that that's 4 years ago is how it started. And I think I should back up a little bit about where I was, what pushed me to go on that trip. And yeah, so I was looking back up a year before, I was a firefighter. So my childhood dream career was to be ever since 7th grade, I wanted to be a Marine and a firefighter. I was in 7th grade on the morning of 9/11. And ever since that day where I saw firefighters run into a building with complete disregard for their own safety, with the Marines going overseas to fight for what I thought was freedom, it just really inspired me and pulled me out of my troubled youth and set me on this direction to want to be a Marine and a firefighter. So I moved forward. I joined the Marines. I had an incredible experience, I think, relatively speaking. I got to travel around the world with my best friends. I slept many nights under the stars in the desert, in the jungles in Japan and Thailand, in the desert in Afghanistan. I served in combat. I was a machine gunner. That was what I wanted to do, is serve in combat. It's just kind of a badge of honor as a Marine. And I came back from the Marine Corps and started to struggle reintegrating. It's a lot going from combat, shooting machine guns at people, to walking down the street, going to community college with a bunch of high school kids. So it was a transition for me, and I started to struggle a bit with anger and anxiety and some I guess you call it PTSD stuff. Just pissed me off, and I'll yell at you if you piss me off. I don't know if you call it PTSD, so be it. But either way, I pushed on, and I joined the fire service. Again, my childhood dream job. It was everything I'd ever wanted, so I thought. And then I realized that the vast majority of the calls I was going on were first medical in general. Like 3% of firefighter calls are fires. The vast majority of the rest of the calls are medical calls, and the vast majority of those calls are mental health in nature, ranging from drunks and addicts in the streets to suicides and overdoses in people's homes. And of course, we are helping people. We are going on life-saving rescues and that sort of stuff sometimes, but the overwhelming majority of calls are just sort of like run-of-the-mill, like, why are you calling 911? Or why, as me as a firefighter, going on this person who has severe PTSD or who is dealing with these severe emotional problems. So just a lot of things were coming up for me that I learned about that it just made me question what I was doing. But most people don't leave the fire service. It was a career that I was in it, and I was there, and I moved forward. But pushing forward through that, just some confusion. I had this moment where I had done some things in the community. I started a nonprofit, and I had been recognized in the area for different things. And I went out of my way to help a veteran in need. And it all culminated in 2017 as me being recognized as the Arizona State Firefighter of the Year. And I spoke in front of hundreds of firefighters at the State Fire School. I talked about leaving a lasting legacy, and I talked about the importance of community and working together and growing and living a life of service. And then about a month later, I just completely broke down. I was, at one point I was the firefighter of the year, and I was smoking weed at work. My brother was dying of cancer. My business, the nonprofit that I had spent so much time and energy on, I had to pull the brakes on that. My best friend from the Marines died of a heroin overdose in a relatively short amount of time. And I just started to really question like what I was doing. And this idea of waiting for retirement was not something that I was buying into anymore. So I just decided, that I'm not going to do this anymore. And I thought back on a trip that I had went on a few years before I became a firefighter, when I went to Peru. And I went to Peru and worked at this orphanage for 2 weeks as a volunteer and taught English to these grade school kids. And we played at recess and stuff. And just looking back on that trip, it always left an imprint on me. And I was working with these kids who had sticks and balls and dirt, but the biggest smiles I'd ever seen. And they shifted something deep inside of me and made me question why we here in the States, or perhaps in Canada too, we can have all these material possessions, but yet we're so deeply unhappy. Yet these kids who have relatively nothing are the happiest, most free and loving kids I'd ever seen. So when I was really struggling through my stuff, I thought back to my time in Peru, and I knew that there was some sort of real, authentic experience that I had there, and I wanted more of it. So long story short, I spent all of spring of 2018 selling all my stuff, sold a bunch of my clothes, my car, pretty much everything I owned. And I will say that feeling of getting rid of stuff was one of the most freeing feelings I've ever had. Like getting rid of, I think I got a weight lifted off my shoulder that I didn't even know was there. And so there I went on this trip, this one-way flight to Costa Rica there, June 26, 2018, with no real plan of ever coming home. And that started what ended up being pretty much a 2-year trip around the world. It wasn't totally around the world, but traveling for 2 years pretty much straight. And I stepped into coaching around this time so I could really be of service to others in their time of need and work with people one-on-one, because I felt like that was missing with the fire service. Like, we're just pushing people in the hospital, pumping them full of medications, and they're right back on the streets. I wanted to serve people, and I wanted to help people, and that's kind of what started it all. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions, or I can keep going as well.
Well, honestly, you've got such an amazing story. We're gonna have to have you back again because I'm sure there's so much there. And I do want to dig in a little bit, I guess, like you found a problem that needed a solution and you knew that you could fill that gap. I feel like our stories are parallel in so many ways. Like, and I had a client not too long ago. He passed away actually almost a year ago, or just a year ago. And he was military like you, and he had dreams and ambitions and everything like you. He saw that there was these gaps. He couldn't get himself clean long enough. You know, it was rehab after rehab after rehab. My mistake as a coach was that I stopped charging him. I love the guy so much. Like, I saw his potential so much. You know, never met him in person, never anything, but that's just me. And I was like, I'll help you no matter what. But the thing is, he wasn't willing to invest in it, which meant he was taking that money and going and spending on the streets. Like, I wrestled for a long time with that, with my ego, with that, with that grief of losing him and that. And this is a real big problem. Like, it's a big problem in Canada, in the US, in Europe, around the world. What was different for you think? Like, I mean, like, it could have been easy to fall into that. Like, how did you know? And that's a hard question. I'm sorry, but like, just throw it on you.
No, I kind of skipped over that because I'm disrespectful of the time. But yeah, I mean, and I'm really sorry to hear about your client. You know, I've lost, especially, like I said, my best friend died of a heroin overdose, and I've seen suicides firsthand, and I've seen a lot of overdoses. So it's really close to me in a way. And I do feel like I for whatever reason, I've been gifted another option. Like when I was in 7th grade, I skipped over this. September 11th, 2001, I was in 7th grade. The summer before that, though, and I was a really troubled kid. I was kicked out of school on a regular basis for fighting, smoking weed, cussing out teachers. I got kicked out of my house my freshman year, booted out of my mom's house like permanently. And you know, backing up a little bit though, that summer before 7th grade, my mom was a single mom. She had 4 kids. My older brother had cancer, so it was very challenging for her. She went from an married oncology nurse to single mom raising 4 kids, and her older brother had terminal cancer. So we lived in financially it was very difficult. But at the end of the day, I didn't get the love I needed. And I felt very unloved. I felt responsible for my mom's pain. You know, she would come home after like burning out at the business she had started, and she would cry herself to sleep, and I'd just sit upstairs and like hear her and cry myself. And I felt responsible for that. And then my brother is laying next to me, and he was in an immense amount of pain from the cancer. And either way, I just started to internalize that. And one day then, after a fight with my mom, in summer before 7th grade, I went upstairs with a butcher knife and dug it into my wrists, wishing I was dead. And I had this moment where I remember thinking about my mom coming upstairs and finding my dead body. And I realized then that I was trying to escape this world because I thought I was so much pain for my mom. So I picture coming up and just being so much more pain, basically. And I just realized like I didn't want to do this anymore. So that was kind of it. And that's where like the September 11th, as tragic as it was, like it really saved my life, because it was for the first time in my life, my young life, it pulled me out of myself and helped me realize there's something bigger happening here. And this idea of living a life of service is what is most important. And so that's where it really, the purpose, the intention of becoming a Marine and firefighter really was activated in me, and why I was able to continue moving forward. Although I got in trouble still, I was able to graduate early from high school and join the Marine Corps, and kind of stepped in and got some leadership roles, and different things happened like I just got the structure and the attention that I was missing from my childhood in the Marines. So it was a nice rite of passage for me. Now the question you asked me about, like, what was it different for me? And I think the thing that, again, I skipped over on my last story, I was smoking weed at work at one point, and I was really frustrated with the people I was working with. It was a toxic work culture, and just all these things were piling on, and I started having suicidal thoughts again. And then I realized that as a 28-year-old man, firefighter of the year, that I was having the same suicidal thoughts that I had when I was in 7th grade. And I knew that if I didn't break that cycle, I was seeing it on calls every day. Like, what happens if you don't break that cycle? If I didn't break this cycle, then that would be my destiny. So I just got to the point where I'm like, fuck no, I'm not going to do this. There's so much more to life. Like I said, I tapped into that feeling I got from Peru. That was always in the back of my mind, always. Going back to Peru, what that was like, man, it just made me question everything about the United States and America, like being an American and all this sort of stuff. And still, I kept the path going on the fire service. And yes, I mean, that was kind of it for me. And it was in that moment, there's a point where I just stepped back and I was like, man, what are you doing? Like, why don't you, like, if you don't like your life, I'm responsible for changing it, period. No one's coming to save me. So that was the moment of clarity that I had. This pushed me back, and it gave me this opportunity to evaluate my values. Like in the fire service, you have a very religious belief or political party. You have a very specific set of values that you either have or you don't fit into that crew. And I'm like, step back from the American dream sort of values, which never really sat with me anyways. And I decided that I wanted to measure my life by how much I give, how much I grow, and how far I go. So what that meant for me was becoming a coach so I could be of service to others in their time of need. The grow meant going to grad school so I could make a difference on a larger scale. And the go was the decision that I'm gonna sell all my shit and take this one-way flight to Costa Rica and figure out how far I can go. So yeah, and that's Action Oriented is the name of the company. I believe that action is the greatest adversary of adversity. And if we're feeling a certain way, we have to take action to get out of it. We have to move forward. And that was sort of the triggering point, the realization that I was the same little boy that I was struggling as a kid. And then I was responsible for moving forward here to take charge of my life.
It's perfect because it's so important taking that action. Even before the action is the decision. And it seems like, again, similar where our paths are parallel. It's, you know, everyone's like, oh, well, it must have been so easy for you to quit drinking, to quit smoking. No. And what about all the other things, you know, like sex, stealing, like so much stuff from my past. All it was for me was a decision. But being decisive is a skill. I still feel I'm indecisive in most things. Like I'll procrastinate on making decisions. I catch myself in it. But once the decision's made, you can start taking practical actions. And it's beautiful. Napoleon Hill always teaches too, or did teach, you know, but his stuff lives on. But decisiveness, there's a whole chapter in his book, Think and Grow Rich, on it. And just how important it is, and that you need to start taking action even before you're ready. So what if we do just, like, in a sense, skip that step of making a decision, just start taking action towards our dreams? It simplifies everything. I love the name. Yeah, and you're wonderful too. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Yeah. Is there something you'd like to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want to say something on that. I think it's really important, and as it relates to that decision, is speaking it out loud, because that's what I did. I told a couple on this New Year's Eve going into 2018. I was sitting there talking. We were kind of bitching with two other firefighters, and we were talking about how we're kind of frustrated. One of the guys was leaving, thinking about leaving too. He actually did end up leaving, and we're just like, this isn't right. We shouldn't be living like this. And I was like, I'm moving to Costa Rica, and I just decided in that moment, and I spoke it out loud. And there's something about that, especially for me, because I'm very big on integrity. And if I speak something, that it's very important that I follow through. So that it was something about that decision, like you said, and then I took a step, and the next step always appeared. And I live in freaking Tennessee right now. I've never been to Tennessee before. I moved up here 6 weeks ago, but I've been guided over the last 4 years on where I would become. But one thing that I wanted to hit, and I'll pass back over to you, Ashley, is in the men's leadership group I'm running now, we're going through 3 different phases. The second phase is all about connecting to your authentic self and vision. And what I think is important when we're talking about vision is to speak it out loud, to feel the words coming out of our mouth so it becomes more real. Because I think there's something that's activated when we speak. And I share the story of like birthdays. In the States, at least, I'm assuming it's the same in Canada, but it could be different. But on birthdays, everyone has a wish. You're supposed to have a wish, and then you blow out your candles, right? And I think it's just total BS that we're around the people who we love, that should love us the most. They're at a birthday party, and we can't speak out loud, out of fear of it not coming true, what we deeply desire in our life. When really, these are the people who should helping us bring that to reality.
Yeah.
So I think on our birthdays, I'm trying to change the paradigm. We should be speaking out loud what we wish, and as often as possible, not for permission necessarily, but for activation. And that's something I want to say as it relates to deciding. Once you decide, speak it out loud and speak it out loud into other people. And that has been for me the key to holding myself accountable and moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, man, we're so on the same track. You haven't watched any of these podcast episodes yet because I haven't put out even one. And one of the last questions that I ask, depending on who I'm talking to, is what are your wishes? Is speaking them out loud. Sometimes I use a dandelion, sometimes I say a magic wand, but it's just, yeah, that was a great spot to end. So I'm gonna ask you, if I passed you a dandelion right now to make a wish, what would it be?
Dandelion. Magical dandelion. Let's see. I like that. Let's do. Well, it's very clear to me. My purpose here is this idea of bringing humans into harmony. Humans into harmony with themselves, each other, and the world around us. And I'm trying to create a system where I'm building out communities where each part of this community has access to health, healing, everything they need for health, healing, and heart-centered living. I moved up to Tennessee as a stepping stone to build out a community, to build a retreat center, and really start to make this thing manifest in the world, because I think we totally cannot count on any powers that be to take care of us. So I believe coming into a sense of responsibility, my sense of purpose in life is being activated to bring this idea of humans into harmony into reality. And that's where the festival comes in. It's going to be retreats and all these sort of things. So that's it for me. Just living in harmony with the people I love, with nature, and trying to make the most of this life while we still can.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Before we go, is there any other advice or tips you'd want to leave anybody today?
Well, the first one that just came up there, my best friend from the Marines he brought a lot of life. He was a joy to have, and he's the one that passed away. But he always said, don't think about it, just do it. And that got us in a lot of trouble a lot of times. And also, if you're struggling in a situation you don't want to be in, stop thinking about it, just go do it. Decide and make happen, because you are going to be fully supported once you take action and start the momentum building. So that's what I'll say.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been a pleasure. If we do another series like this, we'll definitely have you on again, Jesse, because I do want to continue your story. I know you're going amazing places, and I'm sure, have so much more you can share.
Thanks, Ashley, for having me on. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, bye for now.